Get a little lonely in the middle of the night. I'm telling you, baby, it's going to be all right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Anybody remember what today is? It's good to have you here on the morning briefing. NoFilter.net, Caffeine TV.
Hold on.
Jeff DeForest and Mike Lubie Lubitz.
What's
Now, you
the-
might ask why I'm wearing red. There are a few reasons for that. Number one is it was a shirt that fit this morning that happened to be clean. Number two, it's a reminder that it's Valentine's Day. And number three, of course, is that Tiger Woods is back in action. And he's playing the first round of the Genesis Open. That'll take place tomorrow at the Riviera Country Club. That was the first golf tournament I ever covered, Lubie. Golf was a big thing down here. It was one of the few events that took place on a professional level in South Florida when I first moved here. We had a lot of sort of ancillary stuff to the mainstream sports, and all we had at that time was your Miami Dolphins. And other than that, you had Hurricane football. When I first moved to South Florida, it was somewhat irrelevant. Howard Schnellenberger put the team on the map. Well, what we got to do is draw a line right here in the sand and declare this the state of Miami. Still remember that. That was his recruiting philosophy. And that was before the rest of the world was rating this area as a hotbed of football talent. You wouldn't necessarily figure that high school football was going to be huge here. You'd think of California. You'd think of Texas. But Florida became the plum place to pick up recruits. And I'm not sure how relevant it is anymore, Lubie. Recruiting, does that stand in the overall spectrum in college football? We just had a good friend of ours, a gentleman named Charlie Partridge. He was a former head coach at Florida Atlantic University, which was a stepping stone for Lane Kiffin to move on to the SEC to great financial gain and obviously claim as a guy that still had it on the major college level. Ended up as a defensive line coach for Pittsburgh under Narduzzi and had some success there. And he just recently, didn't he tell you that he couldn't take it anymore? The college game has changed so much, the dynamic of it, that you're better off being an assistant in the pros than you are seeking a future head coaching job. Well, we just saw Chip Kelly give up a head coaching job to become an assistant in college.
Yep.
Kind of crazy, yeah. But college coaches are running for the hills any chance they get to get out of it because of the way the dynamic has changed. Where do you think recruiting ranks overall in terms of success on the college level, Lubie? Is it still as vital as it used to be, or is it all about having the money to pay some kid in the transfer portal?
I think it's both. I think recruiting still matters, and you see the powers that win recruit at a high level, but recruiting the transfer portal, for recruiting your own kids to stay is huge. Recruiting the transfer portal to bring in pieces like an NFL team, like its free agency, is huge. And that's the problem, is it's not less recruiting, it's more. So a lot of the young guys are like, screw it. I get it. Cool. The older guys are like, oh, I don't want to do this shit.
Yeah. Let me just go to the pros there and deal with real men who know exactly where they stand. And consequently, I mean, kids are staying in college because they're probably making more money there than they would if they were a fifth-round draft pick in the pros. But back in the day, in the early 80s, when I first moved to South Florida, used to cover a lot of golf events. So we had two that went on a consistent basis. And, of course, the big one was at Doral. It was a Doral Eastern Open at the time. But prior to that, I had some experience covering golf when I was a newspaper writer in California. And the only guy who would talk to me whenever I went to cover the LA Open on an annual basis was Andy Bean, the former Gator. Because the golfers, they kind of had a little bit of an elitist approach, did they not? I wonder how many people. Tiger's much more accessible now than he used to be when he only spoke to Tom Rinaldi. And Rinaldi would say, Tiger, what positives did you take away from that 83? But you weren't getting an interview with Monty or any of that stuff. He's back in action today, 150-1. You think anybody's going to take a plunge on Tiger Woods to win the Genesis, the former LA Open, Lubie?
Oh, I'm sure. That's stupid.
Yeah.
They will.
Hey, Lou, we got another one. Tiger Woods. He wants to put 1,000 on it. Yeah, I mean, they love that at the sports books right now. May as well post up 1,001 because you would have to think that he has little shot of winning it all. So watch him go out there and win it. With our predictions, you know that whatever we say, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to be victorious if you go the other way. But the real problem today, Lubie, and you know this as well as anybody, is that it's Valentine's Day. Now, you happen to be in some kind of Svengali relationship in reverse, where the woman is in complete control of your life. And let's face it, guys, you degenerates out there, and I am a perfect example of it, are never good. Degenerates are never good at affairs of the heart. Now, the acid test for me, always with a woman, was take her out a couple of times. The first night, maybe fancy restaurant. You bring flowers to the door. You open the car door for her. You come around the car and let her in first as you're exiting the restaurant. Maybe you got hit with a pretty hefty tab, but she thinks that you're a man of good taste and manners and all of the things that a woman would find attractive in a man. And after a couple of dates, what do? You take her to the dog track and you see if she doesn't mind being ignored for 4 hours while you're betting your brains out with your buddies. And if she can withstand that, then she's a keeper. But in general, I mean, look, women can detect your insincerity. They're very good at this,
yeah.
and they automatically assume. I mean, you talk about guilty before you even go to trial. They automatically assume that you are an asshole when it comes to these sort of things, and they're not wrong. They're not wrong, people. Just admit it to yourself. Look in the mirror right now. Go downstairs, comb your hair, getting ready for a Valentine's Day dinner, and realize you are completely lacking in any sort of emotional fiber and sincerity in that regard because you're too busy, too concerned with how you won or lost your last wager and when you're going to make your next one. So she can detect right away if you bought flowers at a gas station. That's definitely a negative. And then if you try the ploy that I did a couple of times on Valentine's Day, where you completely forgot about it, it slipped your mind. And so you realize at the last minute, you're on your way home and you think, oh my God, I don't have a card or flowers. And what do? You make the standard move. You go to the graveyard and hope somebody puts something down there in commemoration of one of their lost loves that same day. I guess the litmus test there is, does she detect the dirt that is also on the bottom end? That's not common if you go to a florist or anything like that. Now, going out to dinner, this is especially problematic if you are a degenerate slob and you're seeing more than one woman around Valentine's Day. Because what do? You tell the one that you're least interested in, well, I never go out on Valentine's Day or any holiday for that matter. It's amateur night, and you're just going to get ripped off at a restaurant on a prefix menu. And who feels like jamming yourself in there with the crowd and getting lousy service? Let's go out tomorrow night. And then, of course, that's with woman A. You're going out on Valentine's Day now, and woman B, you're going out the next night. But unfortunately, every now and then, woman A, that you're with on Valentine's Day, all of a sudden runs into woman B, who happens to be dining in the same restaurant with another guy. It's wrought with the disaster and catastrophe, these kind of contrived holidays. And then, of course, I hate to admit to this because I've done some things. I'm guilty of some indiscretions when it comes to these kind of affairs of the heart and romantic endeavors that I'm not particularly proud of, including the time, and I call this a St. Valentine's Day massacre. It's like I was Frank Nitti himself. Just woman had invited me to go with her to the Bahamas, which I wanted to do because they had simulcasting at the casinos there, which they didn't have casinos and or simulcasting here in South Florida, where I was living at the time. And so she invites me to go with her to the Bahamas, but she's coming back on a different day. And the day that she's coming back, I'm already in bed with another girl that I just started seeing on Valentine's Day. She finds me at home, and I had to do the usual thing. Lubie, woman? What woman? I don't see any woman here. So it's definitely a disaster all the way around. And conversely, this is a good thing. If you're fighting unattached, as we say, if you don't have a definitive boyfriend or girlfriend, but especially if you're a guy, it is the best night of the year to go out and meet a woman.
Oh, yeah.
You see two women that are together and they're sitting at the bar and they're just schmoozing back and forth, and you wait a little while to see if any guys show up, and no guys show up after about a half an hour. Those are the women that you want to meet right then and there, right? Because what woman doesn't want to meet somebody on Valentine's Day? She's probably internally crying her heart out, thinking, my God, look at all of these other disgusting women, and they all have men. And then you show up, Prince Charming, of course, and she doesn't realize that you're a degenerate pig and that the only reason that you're out there in the first place is to prey on the poor, innocent women that are emotionally challenged because they've contrived a Hallmark made up this holiday. And maybe you even, and this is always a great move, guys, just a little dating tip on, not that I'm successful in marriages. I'm 0 for 2 with a walk, and who knows? I mean, the jury's still out on this one after several years
Out for 10 years.
of acrimony. Never mind alimony. What comes before alimony? The acrimony. Exactly. That's usually it. But it's advisable, just go ahead and buy a Valentine's Day card. All right. And then you try to overhear the woman's name, and you fill out the card and you give it to her. even though you've never met her before. I don't know. Does that work, Lubie, or does that sound like a lame idea? What
I've
do you
never
think?
done games like that. I don't know. You have to tell me.
Imagine,
Probably.
I mean, talk about Prince Charming, my friend.
Could. Yeah, it could.
Thoughtful. I mean, she thinks all the things of you that you're absolutely not. Thoughtful, considerate,
The things you're
innovative.
not.
Not like you're coming up to her and saying, "Hey, what's your sign? I'm a Cancer."
Oh my god.
Drop a Valentine's Day card on, a beautiful woman as she's sitting at the bar there, and you know that she's traveling alone because, let's face it, everybody else is lined up with a date on Valentine's Day. But anyway, it's usually a day of disaster for anybody that's a degenerate. So we wish you all the success in the world celebrating Valentine's Day. Hey, I watched the college basketball game last night, Lubie, and I tend to go. Just give me a blindfold and the last drag of a cigarette whenever I watch my alma mater play now. They haven't been good for a long, long time. I don't know if they're tournament worthy. They're in the ACC. Syracuse is playing and hosting North Carolina, the number 7 team in the country last night. North Carolina had just whacked Syracuse by 35 points in their previous meeting in North Carolina. And now here's the rematch, and Syracuse is getting 8.5 points, and you're thinking, is that enough?
Yeah.
I thought it was a misprint. I thought they should have been getting 18.5 points. But I go ahead and I step out. I make a small wager on the Syracuse Orange, just
Nice.
again, out of emotional attachment to the program. Although, after 50 years of not being there and the team not being all that good for a long, long time, Jimmy Boeheim, I mean, he was clearly washed up and finished. You talk about a guy, the game has passed him by. He's playing a 2-3 zone for 47 years. The defense that you only lapse into if you're too lazy to actually play defense. And everybody always said, you would talk to other coaches. We had many interviews with other coaches, and we would ask them, Lubie, hey, how does Jimmy B get away with playing a 2-3 zone for 47 years? And they say, well, it's the way they play it.
Yeah, okay.
It's like, fuck you. I don't care who you are. You could be Rick Pitino talking to us about that. And I'm saying, wait a minute. You press guys from the time they get off the bus. You've got a guy in their shorts. How could you possibly accept the lameness of the 2-3 zone? 2-3 zone is a recreational zone. It's something you see at the YMCA when you know that nobody can guard anybody. And so you sag into the 2-3, the two guards that are around at the top. They're running down the court, cherry picking, and it's a disaster of a defense. But you're not seeing that so much anymore. This Adrian Autry, who's come in and replaced Jimmy Boeheim in his first year, he's had his share of, I would have to say, ups and downs. But of late, they've been relatively unimpressive and certainly didn't look like they were going to be a big factor against North Carolina last night. They win the game outright, Lubie. They won it. I actually watched an entire college basketball game last night with a rooting and a gambling interest and came away on top. And guess what? In the end game, this was totally uncharacteristic. Not only did they get away from playing the 2-3 zone all the time and are running around like wild men playing Bobby Knight style man-to-man defense, they did play some zone in the ball game, but it wasn't the traditional 2-3. And they had a lot of success and clinched the game with a bunch of clutch free throws at the end. So 2 uncharacteristic developments in that game, and all of a sudden the struggles on the road for North Carolina indicate that stay away from them as a March Madness champion. Don't think they're going to win it. They don't look that good this year. Hubert Davis looked a little distraught. Syracuse was kind of on top of that thing from the very beginning. The other thing that's happening in basketball, and this is kind of interesting. I don't know. How do you feel about this? Did you watch any of your Miami Heat last night? Miami Heat, Lubie? Did you catch any of this action?
Yes. I watched most of the game.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know what the hell that was.
What's up, Doc?
The Bucks had Giannis, and he played well in the first half. Dame was there, and he played like garbage.
Yeah.
And the Heat were missing Butler, Rozier, who's become a big part of their team, and Richardson. So they're missing 3 of their top 8 guys at Milwaukee. And I don't think the Bucks ever led. They
blew them out. Blew them out of the building. Yeah. Final 123-97 Miami over the Milwaukee Bucks. Does that drop Doc Rivers to 3-5? I want to say yes to that. 3-5.
He's been dreadful.
So that's been just a tremendously wise move that was made by the Milwaukee Bucks. They were doing just fine with Griffin, the guy that they fired. Bring in Doc Rivers, who everybody says, Doc Rivers is a great coach until you get to the second round of the NBA championship. Doesn't matter what kind of talent he has, it's going to be negative. And sure enough, that's been the case. And it doesn't look like he's administering any kind of an immediate positive turnaround with the Milwaukee Bucks, who were doing fine before he got there and now find themselves buried, having lost 5 of their last 8 ball games, including an inexplicable atrocity last night at the hands of a depleted Miami Heat team. Miami, which is struggling to find its own identity, even when they have all of their players, somehow hands them and shellacks them with a 26-point loss. Other thing that's going on in the NBA, real quickly, did you play Little League Baseball? I'm assuming you did, Lubie, but I'm not sure that this was a condition of the generation that you were playing Little League Baseball. And when I was playing Little League Baseball in Belmore, New York, it wasn't uncommon for every game to be played under protest. What was that a situation that occurred here in South Florida, where immediately before the guy threw the first pitch, the manager would run out on the field and address the umpire there and go ahead and say, "Hey, this game's under protest. That kid's 17. He's got his ZZ Top beard and he looks like Danny Almonte." There was always a reason to protest the game. Well, there was a bad call or a situational thing. Certainly, birth certificates were hard to find at a lot of Little League games that were taking place in New York. But the Knicks now have filed a formal protest with the NBA over that atrocity that took place against the Houston Rockets. I don't know if you caught this situation. Jalen Brunson gets called for one of those Jaja Pachula moves on a guy chucking a 3-point shot with 0.3 seconds to go of a tie ball game in Houston. And they go ahead and they award the shooter 3 free throws, of which he makes 2. And of course, with 0.3 seconds to go, there was little Knicks could do to counter that. And they end up losing the game 105-103. And everybody, including the referees who reviewed this, or the officials who reviewed this, said that call should have never been made. Should it be made in that spot anyway, right? A guy's chucking one from midcourt, and you're going to call the defender for taking his space, his ability to land and come straight down away when, is inconsequential, number one. And number two, it was doubtful that this even occurred. It was a questionable call all the way around with 0.3 seconds to go. You don't like to see this in any ball game, no matter who you're rooting for. But especially if you were a Knicks fan or playing with a depleted lineup also, a lot of their big stars have been out. Anunoby is out. Julius Randle is out. They lost their center at the beginning of the year. And even Hartenstein, is playing well as a backup. But, they're really compromised and trying to hang in there and wait to get their players back. They were making a nice run, making some noise. And this is a very costly particular ball game for them, because these are the times that you really want to scratch out some wins and savor every single one of them. We saw how badly it hurt the Miami Dolphins to lose what looked like an inconsequential game, a game easily won against Tennessee, cost them any shot they had to go anywhere in the playoffs. So the Knicks, trying to cultivate every victory they can, and they have this game literally stolen. But does the protest ever hold up? There was one example of it since 1982, Lubie. Are you familiar with this? One example of it, and it involved the Miami Heat, who had Shaquille O'Neal had fouled out of a ball game, supposedly, but it turned out that he only had 5 fouls. So they take him out of ball game. This occurred in a game between the Miami Heat and the Atlanta Hawks. And so they had the incorrect foul total on Shaq, and they actually resumed the game a few months after the game took place. There were 51.9 seconds to go. Shaq wasn't even on the team anymore. He was traded to the Suns. And they went ahead and resumed the game, played the final 51 seconds, which turned out to be inconsequential because the Hawks held on. Nobody scored, I don't even think, in the 51 seconds, and the result stood. Do you believe that they will resume this game?
No.
And that this protest might hold up?
No, it's
the
ridiculous.
Knicks. Feudal?
Fouls called all the time. And they never change anything. They admit it in the 2-minute report every game. And suddenly now they they have to go back. That was a horrible foul. Yeah, you want me to believe me? As a Heat fan, I can name lots and lots of fouls that have fucked us.
Yeah.
Okay. Last night there was 4 that didn't even exist. Literally didn't exist. The replay showed there was no foul. Okay, that's the game. That's
weird. They had a few. They had a few reversal calls in that ball game also, where phantom fouls were called, or they were called on the wrong guy or the wrong direction. All right, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I hope you guys make it. This is a tough day to get through, because when she says, "Listen, we don't have to do anything, and don't get me anything," you know what that means, people.
Yeah.
I mean, she's dead serious. If you don't come through with an overwhelming amount of gratuitous love, then you are dead meat, my friends. Dead meat. And we'll leave you with that thought. That's a very pleasant, romantic thought. But degenerates routinely absolutely disastrous when it comes to affairs of the heart. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, that's our edition of the morning briefing today. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. We'll catch you next time here on NoFilter.net and Caffeine TV.